I told people a long time ago this was gonna happen. Welcome to the Rob Lett Show. I'm your host, Rob Lett. We call these segments Soapbox News. They're current events I felt compelled to get on my soapbox about, but it's also your chance to get on your soapbox in our comments section. The new word they don't want you to say. That's the focus of today's Soapbox News. Not a lot to unpack here today. In this episode, we're going to discuss a conversation with my wife, why the plus is looking like a catch-all, the stupidity of Twitter, the word they don't want you to say, and finally, the hijacking. But before we get started, I'd like you to go ahead and do a few things. First of all, like this video, subscribe to it. If you're on YouTube, to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a bell. That's a notifications bell. Click it and it'll notify you the next time we release a new show. If you're on Rumble, though, to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a share button. Click it and it'll share this video with a friend of yours who should have been here with us today. Go ahead and do all of those things that apply right now. We're at 847 subscribers. We are so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, I can taste it. Big applause to all of you guys who've been in support of this show since the very beginning. Thank you. A long time ago, I had a conversation with my wife about how the Democrat Party panders to different groups in order to get votes. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, I said something to the effect of, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if the Democrat Party started pandering to pedophiles. My comment surprised my wife. She was like, "What? Why in the world would they do something like that? How would they do something like that?" she asked. I don't remember where I was. I don't recall if it was something that I read or if it was something that I heard on the radio, but I do recall finding out at some point that there was this group called NAMBLA that had been meeting on a regular basis. Now, I'd never heard of NAMBLA before, but once I found out who they were, not only was I surprised that they existed, I was surprised they had the guts to even show their face in public. NAMBLA stood for the North American Man-Boy Love Association. Can't make this stuff up. If you've never heard of them before, look it up. They were an organization that had the audacity to be advocates for pedophilia. Apparently, this organization has been around since 1978. Despite the fact that I thought this was a disgusting group, nevertheless, it was a group. So I explained to my wife this term called intersectionality. Perhaps you've heard of it. Intersectionality is when Democrats find a group of people and they pretend to empathize with them in order to obtain votes. So the black community is recognized as a marginalized group, right? So the Democrat Party has taken up the mantle to get behind so-called black causes in order to obtain votes. They've done this with women, they've done this with Jews, they've done this with the Latino community. I can go on and on. Now, what's the problem with a party supporting your causes, you may ask? Well, you may have noticed I said they pretend to support your causes. More on this later. If you've been keeping track of the evolution of the LGBT community, one of the things you'll notice is that the group keeps expanding and expanding to include more and more people, to the point that Dave Chappelle, I think, referred to them as the alphabet group or something like that. And even after having referred to them as that, they still continue to add more and more people to the group, to the point that now I think they want to be referred to as LGBTQIA.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Exactly. People are starting to get so frustrated with this that they're now just referring to them as LGBT plus a bunch of other stuff. So from now on my channel, I'm just going to refer to them as the plus community, okay? It's just easier for me. The problem with the plus community is that they've expanded their name so much so that they've gotten to the point where they've gone a bridge too far. Because the plus is starting to look like a catch-all phrase for any sexual identity, with the exception of heterosexuals, of course. Now, they first opened the door to public scrutiny when they added transgenders and they allowed the opposite sex into each other's restrooms. They added insult to injury when they started inviting children to these pride parades where adults are walking around nude or partially nude. And ever since then, no pun intended, it's gotten progressively worse. Americans in Florida had to have it out with Disney over some of the wokeness in their films, and the most recent thing I've seen is a photo where a child has been encouraged to tip an adult stripper. The plus community has now backed themselves into a corner. Whether they intended to or not, you didn't have to be Elon Musk to see that sooner or later the plus community was opening themselves up to a charge of pedophilia, whether real or imagined. And sure enough, a word started to emerge to describe how people felt about what they were seeing. And that word is groomer. If you're not aware, the word groomer is used to describe when a pedophile is trying to groom a child, train a child, to have an inappropriate relationship. The more people saw what the plus community was engaged in, the more the word groomer was starting to pop up. In a stupid move, Twitter started banning people who use the word groomer from their platform. But you know how people are. As soon as word gets out that Americans can't say a certain word, everyone's going to use that word just to troll you. So before you knew it, Groomer was trending on Twitter. Political commentator Tim Pool posted that he's strongly considering buying a big billboard in the middle of Times Square that says Twitter is protecting pedophiles. No word on whether or not this billboard will be approved. You know, I actually started the process of filming this show several days ago, and I thought this would probably be my shortest show ever. The reason I thought that is because for the first time I was going to do a show where I didn't have to do any research. I had all the information that I wanted to say in my head. And if I didn't have to do any research, that means I probably wasn't going to have to prepare a script. If I wasn't going to have to prepare a script, that means that I wasn't going to spend any time doing any editing either, because I could do all of this stuff in one take. And I had everything set to go until I got to the point where I was going to conclude the show. And it was when I got to the end of the show, that's when I realized that I had a responsibility to say something. And that's when I put off recording the show so that I could end it this way. If you are in the LGBT plus community, let me say something to you that you probably suspect, but you need someone to confirm for you. You are being hijacked. Now, your community hasn't been around for that long, so this feeling is probably all new to you. You have this feeling inside like your community is being used for something that you don't believe in. Welcome to the club. There are black people, like me, who don't support BLM because BLM has been hijacked. There are Jewish people who don't support the ADL because the ADL has been hijacked. There are women who don't support the feminist movement because the feminist movement has been hijacked. There are Latinos who are wondering, who in the heck decided to refer to them as Latinx when they don't even use X in their language like that? So you're not alone, you're just late. If you haven't noticed, more and more black people are starting to leave the Democrat Party because they're tired of this crap. Women have been demoted by the Democrat Party. So if you haven't noticed, more and more women are starting to leave the Democrat Party because they're tired of this crap. Mayra Flores just won the first Republican seat in like 150 years because more and more Latinos are also leaving the Democrat Party because everyone's getting tired of this crap. What about you? Let's be clear about something. Jared Fogle, former spokesman for Subway, to my knowledge, he wasn't a member of the LGBT community. Jeffrey Epstein, recently convicted and committed suicide. To my knowledge, he wasn't a member of the LGBT community. These were just plain old disgusting pedophiles. By calling the word groomer an LGBT slur, Twitter is not only providing protection to the groomer, but they're also trying to associate pedophilia with you. Your hijacking is the most dangerous because they're trying to associate you with the most offensive person in our society. It is so offensive that even prisoners have absolutely no respect for pedophiles. It would behoove you to speak up right now. We're talking about people's children. You don't want to be on the wrong side of this. You will lose. Well, we'll never get it all, but in this episode, we discussed a conversation with my wife. How the Democrats are using intersectionality to build a voting bloc for pedophiles. Why the plus is looking like a catch-all phrase. We discussed why that plus at the end of LGBT is going to end up being a bad thing, because it's going to end up being a group to place any and everything related to sexual identity. The stupidity of Twitter and the word they don't want you to say. We talked about the stupidity of Twitter associating the word groomer to the plus community. It was dumb for two reasons. It's dumb, first of all, because you're trying to provide protection to a group that doesn't deserve to be protected. And it's dumb for another reason, because you're trying to associate a word with a group that nobody was trying to associate the word groomer with. The hijacking. And the last thing we discussed was the hijacking of the plus community. If they don't want to be associated with this behavior, in a nutshell, I said the smartest thing for them to do is to nip this in the bud and to speak up now. The topic of child abuse is nothing to be taken lightly, and all of the signs are there that the Democrat Party is using their organization to test the waters in order to acquire a new voting bloc. And that's where I'll leave it for now. If you're new around here, our channel is both a combination of podcasts, long-form understanding of conservative principles, and soapbox news, videos where you get to get on your soapbox about the latest news of the day. Be sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend of yours who should have been here with us today. We'll see you next time.